what I want to read, or what I've read, what I am reading, and what I'm gonna read. My cat's in the bathroom back there, so if you see my cat right now, yeah. So what I read pretty recently was J.M. Coetzee's In the Heart of the Country. Coetzee, I don't know how to pronounce it. I should have YouTubed like an interview. This book was really interesting. I really enjoyed it. It's written instead of like, solid paragraphs throughout the book. It's written in like numbered paragraphs like that. It's very interesting. There's a lot of play on reality. One paragraph, something will happen, and then the next, the main character will say, or what if this? And then the opposite happens. This character has fantasies, has daydreams about certain things that blur the lines. One thing I picked up from this book, I even read an article about this on a website, was like there's elements of feminism is what this person said, and then elements of motherhood. Our main character in this book, her mom died during childbirth, and so this is like a woman's experience under the patriarchal system. I missed a certain key point. This story takes place on a farm in South Africa, and her father has servants. So there's a little bit of that colonizing dynamic going on, the colonized versus the colonizers. But the motherhood thing stuck out to me pretty well because I feel like our main character, Magda, throughout the novel, there's a lot, and I wish I remembered like word for word. That'd be cool. I probably should have highlighted something. But there's a lot of instances where she seems to be talking about her body, and because she grew up with no mother and she's not around women consistently, she does not have any sort of boundaries or standards on, or an idea of what a woman's body should look like. She talks about how gross she is and how hairy she is, and maybe I think she said something about maybe if I just get pregnant and start spitting out kids, I'll be more precious, things of that nature. And I thought that was really interesting. Obviously, I'm a dude, so I'm probably talking out of my ass, offending somebody. I'm sorry, that's not my intent, but it's a really good book. I don't know much. I like to go in blind a lot, so I don't know much about J.M. Coetzee. This is the only book I've read by him, and I liked the book, but this is probably a bad reader habit, but I never really get urges to just read through the author's work. Like, just, I know people who they like, oh, I like that book by XYZ, and then they just like speed run the whole bibliography. I'm like the opposite. I read one book, and if I think it changes my life, I'll just probably not read that author again. I don't know, maybe that's crazy. But I recommend it. I don't want to say it's rare, but other than ordering this off of like thrift books, I don't think you'd find it, unfortunately. But obviously I live in one place, so I don't know. What I read, this is probably one of my favorite books I've read in a while, honestly, is Warlock by Oakley Hall. So Warlock is kind of like not a one-to-one retelling, but it's kind of like a restructuring, and uses the shootout at the OK Corral and a lot of the characters and mythology surrounding that, and it kind of builds it. And I think in the introduction, Oakley Hall himself says like, this is what I think could have happened or should have happened versus what we know happened. This book's interesting because there's not like a really rapid moving plot. The plot, hell, I actually watched a review on this book from somebody else, and they're kind of right. They were like, there really isn't much of a plot. Some of it's political. Like there's a mine in the town of Warlock, and there's like, the miners are going to get their wages cut, so now they're trying to get a union together. Oh, now they're just not working, striking, and like the fallout from that, and kind of the banding of the strikers. What was I going? Yeah, but this book is really interesting in its takes on like the fragility of law and how flawed man is when upholding the law, and how you have to kind of place the law above you. For instance, one of our characters in this book is basically a hired gunman turned into a marshal, or pedestaled to be a marshal. And the citizens committee that hires him is like, at first they're so like, oh, this is so nice, we finally have a law, we're so hopeful. But then whenever the guy acts like a hired gunman, they kind of start having second thoughts, and some of them still support him no matter what, because it's, you know, better than nothing. And then it's like a roller coaster. Like at one point he ends up resigning and coming back, and that's not a spoiler, but it does happen. I don't really want to say who I think the true hero of the book is, because I think there is one person who comes to the realization and has a more like contemporary way of thinking when it comes to law, instead of thinking, oh, I'm just like, law just needs to kill people. He's more understanding. He's willing to compromise and say like, hey, this new way of doing law sucks and it isn't fun, but it's necessary. There is a character in the book that realizes that, but I'm not going to spoil it any more than that. Like I said, probably one of my favorite books I've read in a while. Once again, I've only read this one book by Oakley Hall. I know he mostly did Westerns. I think he did some mystery novels under a different name. But he's a good author. The writing in this book, the prose in this book is really, I really enjoyed it. It's not really like purple prosy or any, it's not like he's trying to wow you, but his descriptions of landscape, descriptions of gunfights and action, the way that dialogue moves and people speak is very authentic. And sometimes it's almost kind of like humorous, because people are just talking in like a very minor dialect. There's like a town drunk in the Judge Holloway, and I find him funny because he'll just start like, oh God, like, you think you Marshall, you think you're better than everybody. Like, who holds you accountable? Very interesting. Give this a read. You can just purchase it off NYRB's website or just on thrift books or something. What I'm reading right now is The Emperor of Gladness by Ocean Vuong. I'm out of the loop on new books, and so I had previously read some of Ocean Vuong's poem in an English class I had, and I liked them. And I was like, Ocean Vuong just came out with a new book. I'm out of the loop. Let's take those two things and make something out of it. So I bought the book. So far, I really enjoy it. One thing that I do notice in my life when it comes to people who may have started as a poet first, or just have that poetic language, is when it comes to emotions or mood or even scenes of like setting, Ocean Vuong is really good at that. The lush descriptions, the lush imagery throughout the book is really cool, and I really enjoy it. That's what works for me. There are some times where I feel like the prose does get pretty plain, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, because I think that serves to move the plot forward, and I don't really feel like complaining about, in this instance, I don't think it's a complaint to just have prose that moves the plot versus highlighting something. This book, our main character works at like a fast food joint, which kind of reminds me of my own experiences working in like kitchens, or a kitchen. I've only worked in one, but there's like a dishwasher, a person that serves at the counter, a cook, and they're all kind of like crazy, you know. Our main character struggles with pill addiction, goes to New Hope, a New Hope facility. I think it's a real place up in like New England area. He's living with a older lady who's suffering from dementia, and that kind of reminds me of my own grandparents, or my own relationship with my grandma. She had Parkinson's, which I'm not a doctor, but I believe there's a little bit of dementia in Parkinson's, like it comes along later, and it reminds me of my relationship with my grandma, and not like in a teary-eyed way, but it's just like, damn, like you start to see the screws coming a little loose. Overall, I really enjoyed the book. I haven't finished it. This is what I'm reading currently. Um, I don't have like the hard or the whatever the actual books downstairs. I take the dust jacket off when I read because I don't like it when it slides down. But overall, it's really good. I'm enjoying it so far. I don't think it's gonna blow me away, but a book that does its job does its job. So the next book I am going to read is Wallace Stegner and the Continental Vision: Essays on Literature, History, and Landscape by Kurt Miney. I don't know. I've only read one Wallace Stegner book, is Angle of Repose, which is kind of like the story of a family throughout the years. I believe it starts in like the mid to late 1800s and just goes on. I don't remember much about that book. I kind of owe it a reread, in my opinion. But I really like Wallace Stegner's writing. He's kind of one of, I don't want to say he's forgotten because who am I in the literary world, but from the research I did when I was reading that book, Angle of Repose, was that he kind of, I guess, has been somewhat forgotten since he died in the 90s. He's a conservationist, historian about the Old West and the landscapes, and I think somewhat parts of Canada too. I remember reading something about how his take on the West can be controversial because he almost seemingly glorifies, and I'll put quotes around that, but glorifies the white man's expansion into the West. And, you know, there's a lot of bad things that happen because of that. And I think he was like, I don't know. I don't want to quote him or not, or I don't want to misquote him, but I remember reading somewhere about how I guess he was almost like, we tamed the West, you know, kind of vibes. He didn't actually say that, but it was an article about his work, and it was kind of like, I remember, I think the author of the article was like framing Stegner's words with a lot of that, if that makes any sense. So I guess take that with you will. I don't, obviously, even if I found out he was like, we took the West from the Native Americans and it was necessary, like that's, I don't agree with that. You did a lot of messed up shit, but I do think it's important to read different perspectives from your own. So I still read works I can read, or I still read what I can, even if the opinion doesn't match mine. I think he's a conservationist. He's a historian. I need to read more of his fiction. He does a lot of nonfiction too, about like landscapes and history in the Wild West, or not Wild West, but like frontier-ish kind of stuff, frontier adjacent things. Looking forward to it. It's actually, fun fact, I paid like $7 for this. And it's actually signed by the editor. Hold on. The person who owned this book before me lives in Roland, Arkansas, apparently. Hold on. I'm flipping with one hand. Damn it, where's it at? This is embarrassing. There you go. Yeah, look. Oh, shit. I go the wrong way all the time. Kurt Miney, 11/29/97. Cool beans. I checked this out. This is a library book. This is Tombstone by Tom Clavin. The Earp Brothers, Doc Holliday. You can read. I'm about to read this. I don't actually know much about the Earp Brothers. I'm like 2 chapters in. All I know is he went to Dodge City, kind of upheld the law there. Him and his brothers seem to move around a lot. They moved from Dodge City to Tombstone, and I know the OK Corral. Allegedly, this book said at one point they shot 30 rounds in 30 seconds, which is pretty crazy for a gunfight back in the day, I'm sure. But yeah, I checked out one more book. Oh, shit. Actually, I've been reading some poetry recently. I know I'm off camera, but I've been reading Gut by J. Bailey Hutchinson, a collection of poems from her. I can't really say much without doxing myself, but she was an MFA student at the school I go to, which that probably doxed me. But if you rob me, you're not gonna get much. I'm a student, so that'll tell you something. This book won the 2022 Miller Williams Poetry Prize, and I really like her poetry. Fun fact, I won a competition one time, a poetry competition, and she was the judge. And I had the book before I ever knew that, so it was kind of like weird how it worked out. No, I really like her poems. Poetry is something I'm somewhat new to. Like, I've only really been reading poetry for a couple of years now. I took a couple classes that were pretty poetry centric, so I feel like I know a good foundation and know like what to look for. My cats are going crazy. But no, it's just like a slim volume, only 70-ish pages. I really like the way she plays with words. I know that sounds very like elementary to talk about poetry. Oh, I like what they do with words. But there's a certain feeling I get from this collection regarding the landscape in the South. I'm from Arkansas, and I've been around like Arkansas, Tennessee, Missouri, and Oklahoma, and so there's a lot of verbiage and language and imagery in this collection that I really appreciate. I'm slowly working through this book again, because the first time I read through it was like when it just got published, and it was before I had a little bit more knowledge in poetry, and so I feel like I didn't really read it, if you know what I mean. But I'm enjoying it so far. The poem I'm stopped at right now. Let me see. Once again, I'm having to hold my mic, so the poem I'm stopped at right now is, can't do anything, is it's called Heat Advisory, and it talks about the summer in Memphis, or at least that's what's in the first line. So it just talks about heat, and I'm not gonna dumb it down like that. I'm kidding, but no, there's a certain language in these poems that she really has a grip on, and it definitely kind of grounds me in my hometown and the surrounding areas around where I live, because there's like that humid southern heat that drives us all bonkers, and I feel like she really nails it in this Heat Advisory poem. Another book I've been reading with less success than normal. My thing just scraped the ground. My little foot is Homer's Iliad. I'm cool with it. I'm not like the biggest fan of it. There's some cool action scenes. That's all I'll say. I don't really care for it, and I feel like I need some background info to really enjoy this book. I know that might be a sin as an English major to say that you don't really care to read the Iliad, but fight me, I guess. The last book I'm going to present is 1776 by David McCullough. I don't know much about David McCullough. I do know a little bit about 1776. I'm probably here on this earth because of that. I don't know much about David. I didn't even know it won a 2005 Pulitzer Prize. I don't know. I can't read it from where I'm at. But this was something I realized like in the last several months and this year is since high school, I haven't really brushed up on much history. And that made me feel really guilty. So now I've been almost like not reading. I've been kind of kicking fiction out of the club. Like I've been reading like nonfiction and books about race and political parties and class and like minority groups and things of that nature, because I was like, I feel like I don't know shit, and me being a white dude, like I don't know shit. So yeah, that's really it. I try to keep my videos straight to the point. I've been gaming a little bit. I played some Oblivion Remastered earlier this morning. I played some 2K. I just downloaded it. I just said downloaded it. That's crazy. I just downloaded Path of Exile 2. I think I'm going to play a witch. But yeah, that's all I'm going to do today is read and have no life. So yeah, take care of yourself.